Hi everyone, and welcome to a video on childbirth. Tonight I have a fascinating story by an amazing couple who chose for their first baby's birth an unassisted pregnancy and an unassisted home birth. Those of you who are not familiar with this concept, it basically means that the couple chose to give birth outside the hospital without medical attendance, or you could also say without medical interference. They had the baby exclusively by themselves in the privacy of their own home. I decided to do this video as a YouTube premiere so that we can chat and interact with each other. I'll be watching this as this first premieres. If you didn't catch this on a premiere, welcome. Hope you enjoy the topic and the couple's story. An added benefit is that I have been doing this work for 25 years. Check my website out at unassistedhomebirth.com. And the added benefit is that this is my daughter and her husband. It's such a bonus in life for what you've been advocating for someone close to you to choose this. If this concept is new to you, I hope you'll listen carefully to the couple and see how it not only makes sense to them, but it makes sense. The topics they will cover is: why did they choose this kind of birth? How did they prepare? How did the pregnancy go? They will share their birth story. They will talk a little bit about what did they do with the placenta. They'll also share their thoughts on what if something went wrong. But most of all, you'll see the love and joy in this couple and that the freedom they had after the baby was born to be in the privacy and comfort of their own home. Now, this type of birth emerges from your own personal philosophy, and I understand that it's all about comfort. What do you feel comfortable with and where you want to give birth? But their story is wonderful and sweet, and I've decided to keep this video less than an hour, and just listen carefully and enjoy. And one of my advocacies is for husband and wife childbirth. So of course I got a lot of footage on the husband sharing his story. So please share this video with people you know who are in the childbearing years, especially for the husbands, to listen to his point of view. A lot of birth is centered on the woman, the baby, midwives, women friends, hospital personnel. You often don't hear from the father. I invite fathers and men to watch this video as well. Enjoy. Well, happy Thanksgiving. It's November 25th, 2021. And hi, Christina. How are you feeling? How far along are you?
39 weeks and like 4 days-ish.
Great.
Right now.
And how have you been feeling lately?
Good, actually, really good.
What are you excited for?
I'm just excited to have the baby and be holding them and cuddling them and just seeing what they look like, if they're a girl or a boy. We don't know. We don't have a name picked out or anything, so yeah, it's all exciting.
What has given you confidence lately in your preparation for the upcoming birth?
Just knowing, I mean, thankfully I've had no complications or anything this pregnancy, so everything's been smooth, and I joined a bunch of Facebook groups, and so just reading other people's stories, positive stories, hearing how their births went and everything, just, I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we look forward to the baby on the outside of the womb real soon.
For me, I didn't prepare as much as he did in terms of reading literature. I kind of let things go as they would, and things were going naturally as they would. No complications were apparent. I kind of figured that if I were to start getting a little neurotic about wanting to know too much, poking and prodding about information, that would increase stress, and stress is like the one thing that messes everything up. I've known that in my personal life for decades, that more stressed I get, the more things will go awry with no cause other than just the stress being inserted in the situation. So I figured if I just things are going good, I'll be calm about it. I'm not gonna fuss about knowing too much, because things are going as they should.
Hello, baby Felix. He's 1 month old. Unassisted pregnancy, unassisted birth, and Christina, his mom, is here to talk about his birth.
Yeah, so the day before, I kind of knew something was happening. It was almost a week after his due date, and so I was expecting any day now things would start happening, but it was my first baby, so I didn't really know what to expect. So the day before, I had a lot of cramping, like constant cramping, kind of like period cramps. So, and we went on like a 3-mile walk around this park, so that I think helped get things going a little bit. So I kind of knew it was gonna be soon, but then that night I woke up at like 2:30 to pee, because I have to wake up every night to pee. And I like kind of still had the crampy feelings, but it was like not really any different than the day before. So I was like, okay, I'll go back to sleep. So I went back to sleep, but then I woke up at 3:30 with like a more intense cramp that lasted for like a minute and then went away. And I was like, oh, that's different. That's different feeling than the normal crampy feelings I've been feeling. So I kind of tried to fall back asleep because I wasn't sure. It was the first time it had ever happened. So I was like, oh, let me go back to sleep because, you know, it might not be anything. But then 10 minutes later, the same thing. I woke up with like an intense cramp that lasted for like a minute and then went away again. And then, I didn't want to wake Colin up yet because I was, did he hear something? Oh. So I didn't want to wake Colin up yet because I didn't know if it was the real thing or if it was just, I don't know, fake stuff happening.
Right.
So I tried to fall back asleep again, but then 10 minutes later, woke up with another intense cramp, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is happening now. So I was about to wake him up, but he kind of rolled over and he was waking up.
What time was that?
Around 4. It was around 4 a.m. I had like, I guess it was like 3 or 4 contractions happened, and then I was gonna wake Colin up because I was like, okay, this definitely feels like things are happening. So then I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure the baby's coming today. And he was like, oh. So I think we kind of laid in bed for a little bit just to like keep resting. But then I realized I was uncomfortable laying down, so I didn't want to be laying down. So I was like, I need to get up. So we got up, came downstairs. We like turned on some TV just to kind of like have a distraction. And I was bouncing on the ball, kind of standing up, walking around, figuring out what comfortable positions were as I was contracting. And I started timing them. I had this app on my phone that I was using to track the pregnancy that also had a contraction timer. So I used that and noticed that they were gradually getting closer together as time was going on. So I think we stayed downstairs until like 7 or 7:30 and then went back upstairs because I wanted to try to lay down a little bit again because I was tired. But I laid down and it was still, the sun. And it was uncomfortable to be laying down, so I was like, nope, not happening. So I got in the shower at around 8 or 8:30, I think, to see if like the warm water would help, which it did a lot. So I stayed in the shower for like, I don't know, 30 minutes, maybe. I don't know how long. Time felt weird passing, like it didn't feel like time was passing slowly, but it was like hours and it didn't feel like that. So I was in the shower and then I got out, dried off, and then was still upstairs in the room, just trying different positions, kneeling down on the bed and trying to get comfortable. Uh-oh. Oh no. Mister. Oh, gross.
Oh, it happens.
I have to change your clothes now. Oh. Okay. Okay. Are you okay? So then around 10 or 10:30, no wait, I don't know what time it was, but I got back in the shower. I think it was like around 10 or 10:30. I got back in the shower because I wanted the water again. And then this time I stayed there. I didn't really have a plan of where I wanted to give birth. I was like, maybe the tub, maybe by the bed, I don't really know. So we kind of had it set up in case I decided one way or the other. But I was in the tub at like 10:30 and it was getting really intense and I was like, I can't move. I'm just staying here. Like I'm not getting out until he's born because it was hard to move around and the contractions were getting closer together. So I was like, had less time in between. So I stayed in the tub with the water going, and then I don't know what time it was, but like at some point my body just kind of like took over and like started trying to push him out, and I had no control over it whatsoever. Like it was the fetal ejection response or whatever, reflex, whatever it's called. It just like was like, yep, this baby has to come out now. So I was like, oh gosh, like I had no, it was the weirdest feeling ever. Like kind of like when you're throwing up, like you have no control. It just like happens, except that it was a baby coming out. So I was just like, like that I think was the most intense feeling, like causing me, like I was like screaming and Colin was scared.
Were you screaming in pain, or
A
you
little
just,
bit.
it was like weird, you
It
didn't
was a little
know?
bit of both. Like it was painful, but also it was like a weird feeling, unfamiliar. Like my body like was just
Powerful. I
Yeah.
guess I would say powerful.
very, very powerful. Yeah, that's pretty much what, like it was just like an involuntary, my body was just like, woo! So I think that started around, I don't even know what time it started, but it felt like, I don't know if it was an hour, but like every contraction, and then my body would like be trying to push him out, and like I thought that he was coming out at one point, but then Colin didn't see anything, so I was like, oh no. But then there was a moment where I felt, I guess it was transition or whatever, where like I felt his head like coming down, and I was like, oh, like he's coming now, definitely. And so I was trying different positions in the tub, trying to get comfortable. I didn't really find a comfortable position because like it would be comfortable, but then my feet or my ankles or my toes or whatever would start falling asleep, and I couldn't really move because I was like, So I ended up I think I ended up like kind of leaning back at the end of the tub, squatting, sort of sitting, half squatting at one end of the tub, and then Colin was there waiting to catch him. So then he started, well, Colin looked and thought that the head was coming out, but it was just his sac started coming out first because my water never broke. So he saw like the sac coming out, and he was like, that doesn't look normal. Like that's not a head. He was like, what's wrong? But like I looked down and saw it. It was kind of like yellowish looking.
Mm-hmm.
And then like pretty soon after that, Colin looked and saw like hair. He saw his hair, like his head coming out. He's like, oh, that's the head. Like there he comes. So then like Colin was like telling me to push, and I was like, I know. I'm like waiting for my body to do it, because I didn't want to like force him out or anything. So I waited for each contraction, and then he started coming out, and then like his head, I guess, yeah, like his head came out and was only out for probably like 8 to 10 seconds, like not very long at all. And then like as the next contraction came, he like kind of flew out. My water broke and everything. It was like psh, and like all over the tub. I'm glad we were in the tub because it was easier to clean up. Otherwise it might have gotten on the bed or on the carpet or something. But
And that was about 12:30
yeah,
in the afternoon.
12:25.
9 hours of labor.
Yeah, so 9 hours of labor. I guess it was, I don't know how long was like the pushing phase was, because I don't know what time it started, but probably about an hour maybe. But so he came out, and it took him not even a minute. It took him, I don't know how much time to start screaming. He started crying, and we knew he had healthy lungs and everything. So he came out, and then Colin kind of turned him over to kind of get any fluid or anything out of him, out of his mouth, as he's spitting up right now. Sir.
He's full.
So did you eat too much? Did you eat too much? So Colin had him like over his arm. Well, I guess I can demonstrate. He had him like this, kind of. And so I could see in between his legs.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a boy! Like I saw. And I was like, it's a boy! And then he started screaming, and then I was holding him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. Like, in the moment, I was like, what am I doing? This is crazy. I can't do this. But then as soon as he came out, I was like, oh my gosh, like that was the feeling of accomplishment after was like, wow. Like I felt like I could do anything in the world. I was like, geez, I just had a freaking baby in my bathtub.
Yeah.
and he was fine. He was healthy. I didn't bleed too much. Everything, like, there were no complications. Everything went very smoothly. Very, I guess, by the book, you could say.
Better than by the book, actually.
There was no. I knew in case something happened, I knew what to do, like certain situations, but like nothing. Everything was fine. He came out all healthy and normal, and yeah.
Well, hello, Colin, the father of this beautiful baby Felix, who's about 5 weeks old.
5 weeks and just a few hours.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the birth, and it's just very heartwarming when men support the women in their desire to have the birth. In fact, Christine and I were talking, maybe you might have been the leader of unassisted birth, and she followed you, because when she was growing up, she would say if she has a child, the first birth might be a midwife. And so I'm wondering, actually, just tell me where you got the idea of unassisted birth. Like, why?
I would say, honestly, my answer would kind of go back to my faith as a Catholic. I think he's kind of fussy a little bit. He might want mama. He might want mama for a little bit.
Okay.
It goes back to my Catholic faith, and it relates to actually the way the Mass is done, and why there is only basically priests or sacred people in the on the altar. It's because that is spiritually in the church where new life is procured. And it's only the man, the priest, and the church, the woman. There's no one else there doing that task. It is the church and the priest coming together in person of Christi to procure new life for the church. And so at the moment of birth, it should be only the man, the woman. And I kind of had similar thoughts that Tina probably had, where maybe nice to have a midwife, maybe have someone sitting downstairs in case something were to go awry. But a lot of that kind of went to just having faith in God that things would go as they ought. And I remember it was the 4th, and was it the 4th that we went on a walk? And I was like, okay, let's try and move things along. I kind of want this baby to come on. I'm anxious to meet my child, really. It's all there is to it. And on the 5th, I woke up at 4-ish, had heartburn, and I turned over. You were about to wake me up yourself, and you were like, Colin, I think it's happening. She was starting to get contractions, and I was like, oh, well, okay, here we go. Like, I try not to be, a little bit of nervousness came over me, and it was kind of ramping up for those past few days, because I was like, well, it's gonna happen, and you've never done this before, so who knows, right? And what it's gonna be like. So we came downstairs, and she was bouncing on the bouncy ball to kind of relax and try and soothe herself. And I was sitting on the couch. This time, that couch you're sitting on was here where the Christmas tree is. And I was laying there, and I was trying to kind of go back to sleep a little bit, because nothing was really proceeding. Things were just kind of status quo, getting contractions, but not very close together. And I was starting to get some anxiety. And I was trying to just kind of, let's stow that away, because that's not necessary right now, Nothing's happening. And it's just the anxiety of waiting was starting to set in. So I had a pretty good amount of anxiety for a few hours at that point. Fell asleep for like an hour, woke back up, and she was timing her contractions with an app. Then I started helping her time the contractions with that app at that point. It started getting closer and closer and closer. I think you wanted to go into the shower at 10 a.m., something like that, 10:30-ish, or earlier than that?
I went in the first time at like 8:30, I think.
Oh, and then you
earlier.
got out and went
And then
back
I
in.
got out and went back in.
Take a look at Felix today.
At that point, I actually kind of felt better. At that point once I started helping her out, measuring contraction timing, just because it gave me something to do. Because before that, it's you just have a baby in you that's starting to say, I might want to leave, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm here, you know. And then we started running the shower over her to kind of calm her down, help her ease, I guess, the pain of the contractions. And then it started coming in earnest at like, what, 11:30, sometime between then and there. And I was getting really excited until I kind of lost grip of coaching, and she kind of lost grip of being coached. Because her first birth, she's never had this pain before. She doesn't really, going in, you don't understand the magnitude of what you're going to be sensing. You're going to be in all sorts at that point. And I was starting to kind of freak out, and I was trying to do my best to kind of, again, stow that away because that might not be necessary. I'm thinking to myself, we must have made a mistake. We should just go to the hospital. She's like screaming bloody murder, trying to push his baby out, and I'm like, what have I done to my wife? Like, this is something that I've wanted since before I ever knew her, but all of a sudden I'm like, am I indulging my wife in some sort of crazy fantasy that, now we've made a mistake and now we're gonna have to go to the hospital anyways? Losing my mind a little bit. At a certain point I just started praying, the unending decade. I just had and Our Father under my breath to myself, and Our Father, and just Hail Marys until baby's gonna come. And that lasted like an hour. I was just kind of praying under my breath and trying to hold back tears because I felt, like I had, put my wife into the situation. It's kind of that, I guess the stereotypical thing. When they display birth on the movies or in the show, and the wife's like, "Why did you do this to me?" Just screaming and cursing the father because of this. And I'm thinking that of myself. I'm like, I did this to her. Now she has to go through all this by, without any sort of assistance or anything like that. And that was, I was there for a good half an hour, 45 minutes until I started seeing stuff actually happening down there. All this pushing was leading to somewhere. And a very rare thing had occurred. She never broke water, so the sac was intact. And I started seeing the sac come out first. And I had a moment where I was like, that's not the head, is it? It shouldn't be transparent, right? It kind of looks kind of small, like, what's going on here? And then I started seeing hair in the sac. And I was like, oh, that's just the sac. That's the hair. I think I started seeing the head. And that, like, from then on, it was like maybe 10 minutes. I started seeing the head. She's pushing, and it's more intense, but, like, her body is just doing what it's supposed to do. Nothing is impeding her doing what she has to do to get this baby out. And, the head starts coming out. I start seeing a little bit of face. Basically, the chin got passed, and then the rest of the baby just popped out, and I caught him. And I was just, like, overwhelmed. Like, this is surreal. And I have him, at this point, I don't even know what the gender is yet, because I've caught him, and I have his chest on my hand, and I'm slapping his back to kind of get him to cough and cry, so I know that his lungs work, and that he's, all there. And she tells me it's a boy, and then he starts crying, and I'm just, everything else, all the background things, going to get a towel to wrap the baby up and hand him to my wife, that kind of just starts happening automatically for me. The way giving birth for you happened automatically for you. Everything else just kind of goes like gears, and I'm just lost in the emotion, and it's just the most incredible swing of just, like, you have that moment before it actually gets there, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. First time I've ever done this. like, is the baby ever going to come out? Is, you start thinking all those anxieties that try and put in your head, is something wrong with the baby? Was, as you're pushing the cord get kind of wrapped around somewhere, and was he breathing or not? That all starts crescendoing at that point, and then all of a sudden, you have him in your hands, he's crying, and you're just blessed. You're just blessed. Obviously, if there's something that is, a sign occurs to you, where, there's some sort of issue that that something is wrong, and you go to the hospital, that's one thing. But to just kind of go in there and let's run 1,000 tests to make sure everything's fine, well, then you might come to find that, well, what if little Felix had Down syndrome? And then you have a doctor and nurses and whoever other people in your family, if they didn't have a certain level of faith, to say, well, maybe that you shouldn't have that child. It's already alive, but maybe you should just kill it because something's gonna be wrong with it. Mm-hmm. It's like, maybe you don't want to know. Just like we didn't want to know the gender. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to do any ultrasounds because we know that would kind of agitate the baby in utero. Again, stress. Stress isn't good. Mm-hmm. But something were to come. It's like when we were at home giving birth. If it became very apparent that we needed to go to the hospital because there was something else going on that we needed a doctor for, that's what we would have done. But aside from that, all she had was that it hurts because it's giving birth.
Right. True.
Just gotta let the body do what it's supposed to do, and not get too wrapped up in your head about it.
Okay.
So I think I stayed in the tub for probably like 45 minutes after he was born, just kind of laying there, letting things soak in and just holding. I had him on my chest, and Colin got a towel, and we put the towel over him to keep him warm. And after about 45 minutes, I was like, okay, I should probably start trying to get up my goal was just to move to bed, because I moved to the bed. I didn't know when the placenta was going to come out or how long it would take or anything like that. So I handed Felix to Colin, and then as soon as I started standing up to get out of the tub, it just kind of the placenta just kind of flopped out. And I was like, oh, there it is. So I guess it just needed the gravity, as soon as I got up, it was just whoop.
Okay.
It was all together. I didn't take too close of a look at it, but it looked healthy, and it was all in one piece. Everything was good. And we don't really have a backyard or anything to bury it in. We didn't really want to eat it or encapsulate it or anything, so we just kind of threw it in the trash.
Okay.
Because we were like, we didn't really know what else to do with it, so we just put it in the trash. And then I moved to the bed, and he was still attached. We kept him. His cord was attached to the placenta for probably 2 hours after he was born. We wanted to wait until it was done pulsing and everything from the placenta went into him.
Nice.
So then I was laying in the bed with him for another hour, and then we finally decided to cut the cord. So I ordered this little cotton cord tie stuff and little cord scissors off this one website that sells birth supplies. So we tied it off and then just cut it, and that was that. And
so were you very pleased with your unassisted pregnancy and birth? Would you recommend this to?
Thankfully I was blessed with my pregnancy was very smooth and healthy, no complications or anything, so I knew everything would be fine having a home birth. And then the birth went really well, so everything was really good, and I'm very happy with how things turned out. I definitely would not have wanted to be in a hospital having people, especially after he was born. It was so nice just being able to lay in my own bed and not have people interrupting or taking him away from me. That would be, I can't imagine that. But we eventually, I think it was like a few hours later, we weighed him. He was 8 pounds, 15 ounces, and 20 and a half inches long, I think, is what he was at birth.
And was he full term 40 weeks
Yeah,
and 5
40
days?
weeks and 6 days.
That's great.
So definitely healthy, full term baby. Already lifting his head. Like the first day, he was basically doing the same, like doing this, like lifting his head. Like I had him on my chest and he would like lift his head up and like try to look around. Like day one, I was like, wow, you're so strong. And even now, like we can tell his legs, like he's standing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he uses his legs to kind of. He's gonna be an early crawler, I think, an early walker. Yeah.
And so what would you recommend to other women who are pregnant and
highly
coming up on a
encourage
birth?
Everyone to look into home birth, do your research, know that there are other options outside of the hospital, because a lot of people just don't know that that's an option. So I would definitely do. There's a bunch of books, resources you can look into to read about the benefits of doing a home birth and even just a natural birth. If you still want to be in a hospital, it'd be as natural as possible. The drugs that they give you definitely affect the baby and you during the birth process. So it's definitely good to know your options and decide what's best for you.
All right. Well, any final words?
The final word is, this is the cutest baby I've ever seen in my entire life.
I agree. Okay, thank you, Felix.
The trade-off between going into a birth at the hospital, everyone's handling the birthing process for you, and afterwards you have all this sorts of interference. When you do a home birth, the effort is kind of beforehand, you have to handle the birthing process, but afterwards you get to just relax. You know, I was happy to just be able to just walk them 3 feet to the bed and have them sleep together for a good few hours. Just, you know, mother and child bonding. It was a beautiful thing, and it was calm and relaxed in our home, so we didn't have any of that extra pressure, anxiety, meddling.
Yeah. What advice do you have for men who may be on the fence, who might be a little nervous about having an unassisted birth, or what can you do to encourage others? What would you say?
It's not as complicated as you think, and a lot of it's not actually on you. You just have to be strong for her. And if you can keep a level head and, you know, hold her hand through it, you know, it's very rewarding.